Chapter 8. Listen to the voice within. Mahatma Gandhi, upon arriving in England to seek a solution of India's problems, said, "I'm doing this because a voice within me speaks." Gandhi referred to something from within. Call it a power, call it something supernatural, call it anything you wish. Some refer to it as the subjective mind. Others call it the subconscious mind. Some universal thought. Still others refer to the impulses coming from within as hunches, divine messages. Spiritualists refer to it as a voice from beyond. No matter what it is, it gets results, and you should learn how to acquire it. I don't mean a voice that you hear externally. I'm sure Gandhi didn't mean this either, but something within spoke to him unmistakably, recognizably, positively, and when it spoke, Gandhi followed the directions he received, followed them to England, and he would have followed them anywhere. He knew that this voice within could be depended upon for guidance, that when he properly prepared his mind to hear this voice, he could await, with expectation and confidence, a definite message. Gandhi didn't try to force this voice to speak to him at any certain time, or to influence what it might say by wishful thinking. Gandhi was a spiritual leader of great humility and self-abnegation. He always placed purpose and principle above his personal needs or desires. Therein lay his great power over governments and people. They had nothing they could offer him except justice. They knew they couldn't bargain, that when they came into the presence of this saintly man, they had to face the truth. No matter how much pressure they tried to put upon Gandhi, he never moved until the voice within spoke. You will do well to cultivate this voice. All great men and women listen to it. They may not describe this inner direction in the same words, and the voice to them may be an indefinable feeling or conviction which always comes when important decisions have to be made, if they make themselves quiet without and within, and just listen. It's hard to listen. As a child, you may have felt you had to shout and kick up a ruckus before anybody paid any attention to you. As an adult, you may have gained a measure of success in the world by overshadowing and dominating. If so, developing the art of listening with your inner ear and your inner mind for counsel that comes from your deeper self, the God part of you, a higher intelligence, or whatever you choose to call it, will not be easy. The late Thomas A. Edison was adept at listening to this inner voice. When he was working on an invention, trying to get the basic idea that would make the invention function, he would accumulate all the known facts with his conscious mind and then lie down on a bench or a couch in his laboratory and wait for the idea to flash to him out of thin air. Edison's assistants would keep plugging away while the old man was taking a cat nap, but Edison would eventually get up with the answer. He sometimes had to take quite a number of cat naps before the answer came, but it always came that way when Edison prepared through proper research and had stimulated the creative power sufficiently to supply the answer to him. How Edison did it. A newspaper story dated October 21st, 1931, tells how Edison, working with his two associates of more than 50 years standing, Fred Ott and Charles Daly, finally solved the secret of making synthetic rubber. The news article says, on Monday, he, Mr. Edison, started to sink into a stupor. He was giving the voice within an opportunity to speak to him. But Daly and Ott were still pounding doggedly at their experiments, and on Tuesday night the solution flashed out of the mysterious nothingness. This is actually quite a fine way to refer to Edison's inner mind or the inner minds of his associates. What happened, very plainly, was that the creative power within the minds of these three scientists finally produced the answer that they had been seeking. This answer came like a bolt from the blue. It was not the result of any conscious thinking or cogitating. Wham! And there it was. The inner voice had spoken, crystallizing and distilling all their past work, now stored in consciousness, and presenting to these men in a flash the answer to their problem, how to make synthetic rubber. The little voice always speaks when you make up your mind what you want and when you go after it. It is only when you are undecided, disturbed, upset, worried, doubtful, or fearsome that you can't hear the voice within. You drown it out with your own static interference. If your own little inner voice suggests that you ask for something, do not be backward about asking. You have nothing to fear. The other person will never help unless he knows your wishes, so you must ask. Or if you feel you should speak to someone about something, don't hesitate. Go and do it. A man wrote to me from England that he had been reading The Magic of Believing and that it had already altered his life. He said, "I was being used by someone in an indirect way to do something that I did not believe in. I was most unhappy about this, but I did not want to anger the person who was doing this. Fear, you see, held me back. All of a sudden, while I was weeding my garden and thinking about this situation, something seemed to come over me. An inner voice spoke and gave me orders, and I was no longer afraid. I dropped my gardening tool and went and told this person just what I thought, and I have been able to stop this persecution as a result. I tell you, I felt like a different person ever since." Learn to recognize your inner voice. When the inner voice really speaks, it is a sign that you are ready to act. Drop your tools, as this man from England did, or whatever you are doing, and do what you feel impelled to do. But be sure that you have learned to recognize the inner voice properly, and that it is not just your wishful thinking or imagination or your fears talking to you. Joan of Arc was just a French peasant girl, but she heard the voice speak. Following its direction, she inspired the French to drive the English out of Orleans and enable Charles to be proclaimed king at the Rheims. Jesus heard the voice of God speak to him and acted upon this inner guidance to lead all mankind to higher spiritual attainments. Abraham Lincoln, in the small hours of the night, during the critical hours of the Civil War, listened to the voice within, and because of the messages he received, arrived at many grave decisions which saved the Union. Mark Twain's characters used to talk to him. He heard their dialogue spoken in his mind and simply wrote it down. Mark Twain placed great reliance on his intuitive powers. He believed in hunches and always listened to the voice. To get ideas from your own subjective or subconscious mind, you must be able to make your conscious mind receptive. Of course, we all know that it is the conscious mind which reasons, which weighs, which calculates. The subconscious mind does not do any of these things. It simply passes on ideas to the conscious mind. You have probably heard people say, play your hunches, listen to your gut. What are these hunches? Where do they come from? They come from the workings of the subconscious mind. Psychologists tell us that to put the human mind in a receptive condition, you must relax. If you've ever lain on the massage table and be told by the masseur to relax, then you know what I mean. Let the body go limp. If you have trouble at first, try it with your arm, then both arms, both legs, until the whole body is gone over and relaxed completely. The mind will automatically let go then too. When that is accomplished, concentrate on what you want. Then hunches come. Grab them. Execute them as the little voice tells you. Do not reason or argue, but do as you are told and do it immediately. You will soon understand what psychologists, mystics, and students mean when they tell you to stop, relax, think of nothing when you wish to draw on the subconscious and have the little inner voice speak. As you further progress, you will also begin to realize what the seers of the East had in mind when they said, become at ease, meditate, go into the great silence, continue to meditate, and your problems will fade into nothingness. The road ahead will become illuminated and your burdens will fall away one by one. Is there anything clearer than Pilgrim's Progress? My message is no different from that which Bunyan conveyed there, only I, as I've said before, am putting it to you in different words. The voice within can guide you, asleep or awake, if you train yourself to rely upon it. A young housewife in Fort Worth, Texas, was awakened one night with a feeling of great urgency. The voice within told her to get up and look about the apartment. Her husband and baby were sleeping. Everything appeared to be all right, but she couldn't get over this uneasy, apprehensive sensation. To quiet her nerves, she got out of bed and found herself directed to the bathroom. Nothing seemed to be wrong, but she felt impelled to flush the toilet. The instant she did, hot water rushed out, followed by clouds of steam. The pipes began to pound. She aroused her husband, and he phoned for help just in time. Something had gone wrong with the thermostat control in the basement, and had this not been discovered, the boiler would have blown up in the next few minutes and wrecked the entire house. Follow the urgings of your voice. Give heed to your hunches when they come, whenever they come. Don't turn a deaf ear to the voice within. Your inner mind is aware of conditions and things that your conscious mind knows nothing about. You've heard people say, something told me that I should beware of that person, or I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, but I didn't pay any attention until it was too late. I wish I'd followed those hunches and feelings now. It's there. That's something, trying to serve you in many ways if you will let it. A widow who wanted to find the right man and marry again had the urge to leave New York and go to California and buy a home. She went to visit friends in Long Beach, who took her around a property that was for sale. She fell in love with a house owned by a widower who in turn fell in love with her. Instead of buying his home, she married the widower and got the right home anyway. They are one of the happiest married couples today that I know. In this case, the voice within led her 3,000 miles to bring her an answer to her desire. But don't you travel 3,000 miles expecting to find romance unless you get the same clear direction which came to this woman. Your romance might be right around the corner from you, waiting on a bus, in a store, in a dentist's office, a park, a library, or a social occasion. But if you picture meeting the right man or woman for you strongly enough and persistently enough, you will get the urge to be at the right place at the right time so that the two of you can be brought together. Remember, like always attracts like, and someone is looking for you just as eagerly as you're looking for him or for her. Since your subconscious minds are not limited by time or space, you'll make contact sooner or later, and the inner voice will tell each of you, he or she is the one for me. You do not actually hear the voice within. Occasionally, I meet men or women who tell me, in all seriousness, that they hear voices. This is quite different from the voice of guidance and is often the sign of hallucinatory conditions which they have developed through some emotional upset or nervous affliction. Such a state is not to be desired and should be guarded against. These voices are so real to the people who hear them that they are convinced that they are either obsessed by some discarnate entity or some real-life individual who has designs on them. When this condition exists, they are usually terrorized by it. I was in the office of Johnny Neblett, a radio commentator, one time in Chicago, when an attractive young woman came in, unannounced, and said to him, "Well, here I am. You've been calling to me, and I've come. What do you want with me?" Mr. Neblett stared at the young woman in amazement, and then decided it was a gag of some kind, and just laughed. "This is no laughing matter," said the woman, highly incensed now. "I can't sleep at night. You're always talking to me. I hear your voice all the time. You've got to stop it. You're driving me crazy." This sobered Johnny in a hurry, and he turned nervously to me for help. "This man is a psychologist," he said, introducing me to the woman. "I haven't been calling you or talking to you. I never saw you before. I'm sure it's all in your mind. He can explain it to you." Just as easy as that, I was handed this assignment. This young woman quite obviously was emotionally unbalanced and had developed a fixation on the commentator from listening to him on the radio. Something in his voice appealed to her, aroused her emotionally, and she had mesmerized herself into thinking she heard his voice inside her head, as she put it. If I'm thinking of him all the time, I might as well be with him, she insisted. He's lying. He really wants me. He has attracted me telepathically. He doesn't need to have seen me before. His mind is so strong that he can reach to me and make me do what he wants. It took me several hours to convince this woman that the voice that she thought she heard was a creation of her own emotionally disturbed consciousness. During this time, she had accused the commentator of having designs upon her and demanded that he release her. When she was finally straightened out and left, and considerably embarrassed, apologizing for the trouble she had caused, thanking me for freeing her from her delusion, my commentator friend almost had a nervous collapse himself. One more case like that, he said, and I give up radio. I cite this experience to make it very, very clear that the voice within has no connection whatsoever with this kind of voice. It is not a voice, actually, in the external sense of the word. It is an intelligence, a sudden idea or knowledge or intuitive flash which communicates with you from the subconscious and gives you an urge, a definite feeling of what to do or say or in what direction to move with respect to some problem or situation. You can, with a little practicing, always distinguish a hunch or the voice from within from the way you feel when your imagination or your wishful thinking tries to cook up something for you. This difference in feeling cannot be put in words, but you'll recognize it. You won't let yourself be carried away with the wrong impressions. You'll know deep down within yourself when the real you is talking to you, from the center of your being, the creative center. Then, like Gandhi, you will act with confidence in meeting any life experience as it should be met, saying to yourself, I am doing this because a voice within me speaks.